You're listening to Fallen, a Legatum short story by Lulu Sylvian.
Chapter 1. Stars sparked in the darkness behind Demi's eyes. There was darkness and ringing and bright bursts of pain. Air rushed into her lungs on a gasp as feeling returned to her body. Her palms stung. Her entire foot resonated with the numbness of impact, and her knee. Her knee. She managed to roll onto her butt, grabbing at her knee. Light made its way into her vision as sound returned to her ears. "Ow crap," she finally managed to express herself. "You okay?" Maddie called the ambulance. She might have broken a hip or something. Demi glared in the direction of the voice. She had been feeling her age, but she wasn't that old. "I didn't break my hip," she bit out through the pain that radiated between toes and knee. There was a sudden warble of a siren. Demi closed her eyes with embarrassment. She tripped. She didn't need an ambulance. The siren was off seconds later, and the rumble of a truck engine idled in the street nearby. "You okay there?" Too many emotions battled in Demi's mind. Unable to properly focus around the pain and humility, she breathed deeply before seeing if her eyes would work and cracked them open. The face that greeted her was breathtaking. She was mesmerized the most by his sage green eyes. His brows were lifted as he looked at her questioningly. Demi managed to nod. Truth was, she wasn't okay. She had embarrassed herself epically by stubbing her toe, and now she was having heart palpitations because the rescue hero they had to call in was distractingly handsome. No, not handsome. He was beautiful with darker skin and paler eyes and bone structure that artists had been trying to capture for centuries. His fingers caressed the inside of her wrist, and the breath she had struggled to reclaim left her again. It wasn't fair that a dashing smile and good cheekbones could inject butterflies straight into her bloodstream. "What's your name? Can you tell me what happened?" He was professional. Didn't he realize how much worse he was making everything? Maddie said an elderly lady fell and broke her hip. "Your pulse is elevated." Maddie has greatly over-exaggerated the situation, she finally managed to say. And of course, her pulse was elevated. He was touching her. "I stubbed my toe, scraped up my knee, and smacked my hands." She held up her palms so he could see the pebbled bite marks of small stones. He ran his thumb gently over the inside of her palm as he examined her hands. "That must sting." Demi nodded. "Can you stand?" He held out a hand to her. "What's your name?" "My name's Demi." The few spectators, who had gathered when the emergency vehicle arrived, began clapping as Demi made it to her feet. If she didn't physically hurt so much in so many places, she would have found the wherewithal to glare at them. Elderly. "Nice to meet you, Demi. My name is Eli. Let's get you over to the truck and get you cleaned up." She was distracted by the way his arms bulged, straining the sleeves of his department-issued t-shirt. It took a moment too long to let go of him, to walk on her own. Demi limped behind Eli. She took her time. She had to be careful with her knee. Maybe she broke a toe? The view from behind Eli was almost as good as the one from the front. She was being sexist and ogling him. As long as she didn't say anything out loud, it shouldn't matter. She sat where he indicated, by patting the bumper on the tail of the truck. "New in town?" "I'm just visiting," she answered. "Family?" "No," she said with a shake of her head. "Oh, don't do that," he said, reaching out for her. "What?" Suddenly his fingertips were on her scalp, dancing down her neck and along her jaw with gentle probing touches. He artfully dodged her gaze as she stared up at him. Wanted to confirm no head or neck injury. After all, when the elderly fall, we don't want to take any chances. "I'm going to give Maddie a piece of my mind," Demi grumbled. "Don't be too hard on him. He's a good kid, always does what he's told." "He's a kid?" "Yeah, didn't you see him? He's the one who called." "I got that." "No, I didn't see him, just the actual old geezer out front when I kicked the curb." She was grateful for the distraction. Eli was running his hands over her limbs, touching her in a very detached professional manner. But he was touching her. That's Maddie's dad, Tim. He's a good guy. I'll suggest he get his glasses checked. It had to be the hair that confused him. Eli picked up a section of her hair. She was going to melt into a puddle of her own juices if he didn't stop doing things like that. Her hair was currently white with blue and pink ends, in homage to her favorite comic book anti-hero. She thought she loved bad guys who did the right things for all the wrong reasons. But confronted with this real-life hero, she was having a serious change of heart. She was beginning to understand the appeal of good guys who did good for all the right reasons. I would have thought the roots would have been a clue. There was a collection of boxes of assorted dye colors back in her room. It was time for the Harley hair to be replaced with something a little less fandom. Okay, you look sound, nothing broken. Let me take a look at this knee. Demi pulled the leg of her pants up to her thigh. Fortunately, she hadn't been wearing the tight jeans today. His fingers were gentle, but she still winced when he touched her. So, not here for family, who are you visiting? This will be cold. She hissed in a breath when he put frigid antiseptic wash over the nasty scrape. Okay, maybe visiting was the wrong word. I'm on kind of a personal retreat. I'm staying at the Rose and Lattice. Where? It looks like it was once a church. There's a catering company in the front. The local fireman, not knowing of the bed and breakfast, was a serious concern. Almost as serious as the fact that the catering company, not a cafe, did not in fact provide meals as advertised. That had been the fiasco that started all of this. The Rose and Lattice had been recommended through a writers' group. It sounded perfect, quiet, bucolic setting nestled against a forest. And when she checked it out, it seemed even more perfect. The Rose and Lattice served artists specifically. With room for no more than 2 artists in residence at a time, Demi had been required to fill out an application. This was a working retreat, not a vacation spot. Demi was certain this small town was prominently featured in many mysteries and romances. It was picture perfect. The retreat center was really a quaint bed and breakfast in a remodeled old barn, with meals provided by the resident cafe. Each space had 2 rooms with a grand porch and a bathroom. There was no need for a kitchen since meals were provided. Only the owner of Rose and Lattice hadn't told the catering company. I'm going on vacation, the woman practically growled at Demi as she tried to explain. Rose told you? She's not here. She's never here. Demi had to scroll through the messages on her phone and showed the caterer where Rose, the owner, said in very clear terms that meals were included and provided by Duncan Cafe and Catering. That's you, right? The caterer reluctantly put together a bagged lunch for Demi, a sandwich and a bag of chips. She then let Demi know in no uncertain terms that Duncan Catering would not be providing any additional meals, since as soon as they were finished with the wedding they were prepping for, they were leaving for a vacation. She was on her own for food. And that's why she had her arms full of groceries when she tripped. Terry Duncan's place? Eli asked. Duncan Catering. A woman named Rose owns or runs the rest of it, Demi said with a sigh. Eli chuckled. The smile crinkled his eyes, and it gave him more character, made him even more handsome. That explains it. Rosie changes the name of her place every few months. Well, it's frustrating, it's left me in a real bind. I was supposed to have meals provided. I paid for a retreat center that included meals, and I'm stuck with food I can heat up in a coffee maker. At least the room has a coffee maker. A young man approached tentatively. Eli, here's that lady's things. Oh, hey, Maddie. Thanks for calling this in. Is the lady okay? Maddie asked. She's going to be just fine. I like your hair. The Joker's a jerk, Maddie blurted out before turning and hurrying back into the shop. Oh, I guess I won't be giving Maddie anything more than my thanks. Eli nodded, a grim expression on his face before he burst into a smile. We all look out for Maddie. You could have said something. Demi felt embarrassment flush her face. She had been gunning for Maddie from the second she heard he called her elderly. Maddie had Down syndrome. He had to be repeating over the phone what his father had told him. Had he seen her himself, Demi was certain he would have told the operator that Harley Quinn had fallen in front of his father's store. Now I feel like a total jerk. Am I good? She slid off the bumper and stood. She cast her glance down at the bags. They were ripped. She wasn't good. She wasn't about to let Eli know that. She had been well trained by her mother to always smile on the outside, even while curled up and sobbing on the inside. It was a survival tactic that made therapy difficult. Demi kicked herself with every other wincing step. The hot fireman had offered to give her a ride back, but no, she had to have her pride. She had to pretend that her knee or her foot weren't hurting that badly. No, I'm good really. You know the saying, walk it off. I'll be right as rain by the time I get back to my room. She probably threw even more clichés at him. What she wanted to do, what she should have done was press the back of her hand to her brow and swoon right into those bulgy muscular arms of his. She would have bet even money that he would be able to lift her up without doing too much damage to his back. He could probably even throw her over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes and smack her backside while he was at it. Random romantic drivel scenes flashed through her head, and she limped a few blocks back to the retreat center. She could probably come up with a good scenario from every book and every rom-com she'd ever consumed. The rogue adventurer and the heroine way out of her depths, searching for the missing scrolls of Aztec chocolate magic. Or was it the Mayans who were responsible for chocolate? Damn, Eli would look good in a leather loincloth and all those feathers. The Aztec hero model was always appealing. Maybe it was because of that one image that seemed to be in so many Mexican restaurants, had her associating her love and hunger for nachos and tacos with a different kind of hunger for the hard body in Aztec regalia, specifically that massive feather headdress. Hell, Eli had the kind of physique that would look good naked or in clothes. He would be breathtaking in an office romance situation. Super hot executive and the bumbling intern, and some late-night spreadsheet action. By the time she hobbled up the stairs and had the door to her suite open, Demi had plotted out an authentic cowboy romance, a regency, and even a space opera. What she needed to do was channel that energy into her writing. But she didn't write romance, she wrote mysteries. The cozier, the better. She could introduce a new character to the coffee shop series she was working on, or, and this is what she had been thinking when she swung her foot at full velocity into the concrete planter, she could develop a new small-town series. She already had a handful of character inspiration with Tom, Maddie, Terry, Rose, and of course Eli. This was a working week. She had time for both writing and developing. She needed to make sure she didn't hyper-focus on one project, but scheduled and paced herself. She could do it. She could do world building while taking hikes, that is, if she was even capable of walking. Stupid, stupid, stupid. She really should have taken the hot fireman up on his offer. She put the bags of groceries on the dresser and pulled out the liter of soda. No one would be opening that one for a while. Packs of ramen noodles and granola bars, and where the hell was her ice cream? She appended the bag, but no pint of caramely chocolatey goo-laden frozen dairy goodness magically appeared. It was gone. She sat with a thump, thoroughly defeated. What she should do is pack her bags into her car, and get on the phone and demand a refund from the missing landlord. Except, damn, that was a really good plot bunny right there. Missing owner of the local B&B, small-town murder. There is evidence of an incident in the kitchen. Oh yeah, blood splatter that they have to send out to DNA, and they don't find out until it's go time. The blood is from, what? What's the blood from? Demi crossed the room and scrambled through her laptop bag, pulling out the first notebook she found. It didn't matter what the title across the front was designating those pages for, she needed paper now. Grabbing a pen, she began writing frenetically as she crossed back to the desk, sat, and continued to write. The blood belonged to a chicken. It would make sense that the B&B owner would have some chickens for fresh eggs. Why would she butcher her own birds? Because young roosters aren't good for anything but dumplings. Forgetting all about the missing ice cream, or lamenting having to let the soda settle after having been dropped and shaken to explosive levels, Demi wrote. She filled page after page with character description and backstory. She had names. The B&B owner was Daisy. After all, names and locations have to be changed to protect the innocent and herself, since making up stories about real people was frowned upon. Daisy would be secretly at war with the corner cafe owner, because they both think of themselves as the town caterer. Her name was, great, what was her name going to be? Well, Duncan, that could go with Hines or not MacLeod of the Clan MacLeod. You cannot write the Highlander into your mysteries. No immortal Scotsman. But MacLeod was a good name. Terry, Robe, no, not Robe, Terence, Teresa, Risa, Lisa. Yes. Lisa MacLeod would run the cafe and bakery, and be at war with Daisy. Demi cast her gaze around the room. What could she use for a name? Bottle, table, laptop, coffee maker. Hey, back up, Coffee is a last name. Daisy Coffee and Lisa MacLeod, and they are. Demi began cackling loudly. Oh yeah, this is gonna be good. Daisy Coffee and Lisa MacLeod were going to be in a war over the hottie young fireman. They are both older than him. The town sheriff is sweet on Lisa, but she's clueless. And everyone thinks their rivalry started over the Jones wedding, so many years ago, when Cindy Jones hosted her daughter's wedding at the Spring Flowers Bed and Breakfast, but hired Lisa without consulting Daisy to do the wedding party breakfast and the wedding cake. Demi continued to giggle to herself and write. She didn't notice the passing of time at all. Everything okay in here? Eli's deep voice called out. Demi screamed and jumped, throwing her pen in one direction and her notebook in another as a result of the scare. She sat sprawled in the chair as if a sneaker wave had wiped her out. Her heart thudded in her throat, making it difficult to catch her breath. Hey, Eli waved awkwardly as he stepped into her room and closed the screen door behind him. He held out a bag, wrapped around something that suspiciously was the shape of a pint of ice cream. Sorry, I didn't mean to spook you. Demi nodded and held up her hand, finger pointed lifted in a silent request for him to give her a minute. You know you should at least close the screen door, you don't want an intruder to sneak in on you. Or worse, a skunk. It takes forever to get that smell out. Still breathing hard, Demi managed to catch enough of a breath to talk. I was focused. Damn, you got me good. Eli was checking her pulse before she could tell him she was fine. Your pulse is elevated. Of course it is, you scared the crap out of me. What are you doing lurking around trying to catch unsuspecting visitors off guard? When did it get dark? What have you been doing that you didn't notice it getting dark? You really should turn some lights on. He crossed the room and flipped a switch, illuminating the room. I brought you some new ice cream. I didn't think you would be up for walking all the way back to the grocery store to get a new pint. Maddie was pretty upset when he found the ice cream after you left. He hadn't seen it to put it in your bags. I told him it didn't matter, it was all smashed up. Thank you, she said, reaching out for the bag. Is this a service you extend to all your rescuees? Rescuee? He chuckled. He had a nice laugh, and Demi was torn between flirting with him and diving back into her notes. She smiled at him, and decided she would distract herself tonight by doing a deep dive into his character description. I'm a victim of my own doing, so I'm not your victim. I'm your rescuee. She twisted her hand and lifted her palm with a little shrug. After watching you limp away, I thought once I got off duty I should come check on you. I bet you haven't elevated or iced your foot, or your knee, have you? Demi shook her head. No ice. Eli reached into the side pocket along his leg on his cargo pants and pulled out a puffy package. Yeah, that's what I figured. Standing, he held out his hand to her. Demi bit her lip and tried to remember every single nuance of sensation that came with sliding her hand into his. The warmth, the rasping of calloused fingers, in contrast to the softer parts of his hand, the way his skin slid over her palm, and it felt as sensual as if you were palming her. Her breath caught, her pulse sped up, her skin tingled. "Why don't you use the bathroom?" he said. Why? Was her level of sexual frustration so obvious she needed to take care of a few things before they could continue? "Once we get your knee propped up with an ice bag, you aren't going to want to be jumping up and down." "Oh, right." He followed her into the bedroom while she continued into the bathroom. When she came back out, he had pillows propped up and blankets folded to use as a knee prop. "Thank you," she said as she sat on the bed and shifted into position. "My knee really isn't that bad. And this will keep it from getting worse. You were limping pretty badly as I watched you walk away." "Oh, so you were watching me walk away?" Eli cleared his throat and smirked. "For purely professional reasons, I assure you." "I see, just like delivering ice cream and bringing me a cooling pack is a professional courtesy." He looked up at the ceiling, and his eyebrows quirked into a unique undulating wave. That was definitely going into his character details. The ice pack is a professional courtesy, the ice cream is flirting. Chapter 2. Demi woke up with a smile on her face. Eli had stayed a little longer than professionally necessary to check on her knee. When he admitted to flirting with her, she hadn't felt that giddy for years. He hadn't left with the promise of a date or anything, but this town was small enough they were bound to run into each other again soon. On autopilot, she started a pot of coffee before stepping into the bathroom. It was time to switch out the multicolored hair for something singularly dramatic. She looked at the boxes she had purchased. Her choices were a deep garnet or a purpley burgundy. Both were colors she had used before, but not over bleached hair. Over her normal auburn tresses, these colors enhanced more than anything else. The garnet made her brighter, the burgundy darker. Not being in a dark mood, she selected the garnet. After applying the dye, she wrapped her hair in a plastic shopping bag, and then turbaned a towel over top. She grabbed a cup of coffee, programmed a timer, and set about getting a few pages written this morning before breakfast. When her timer binged, she sighed and quickly reviewed the writing completed on the continuing series. Satisfied with her progress, it was shower time. The shower didn't last very long. Demi had barely gotten in before she jumped right back out. The water was freezing. Did the hot water heater go out? Was there a hot water heater? After jumping out of the shower, she searched for one of those tankless water heaters just to make sure she hadn't missed something. She was really glad she hadn't removed the plastic bag until she could get her head under water. There was no hot water. She decided to conduct a little experiment. She turned the sink tap on and let it run. She finished getting dressed and checked the water. It was still running cold. She had another complaint to add to the growing list. Maybe she needed to cut her losses and leave. And go where? This was a well-orchestrated plan. Go away for a week, and right while the cottage she rented in Roseville was tented for termites. There wasn't anywhere else she could go. Her landlord had covered the bill for this place. Demi wasn't exactly rolling in expendable income. She couldn't afford a hotel, even a cheap one. She took her coffee out on the porch. At least looking out into the woods, she could let her mind wander and not think about everything for a brief moment in time. She wrapped a sweater over her shoulders and hugged around a steaming cup of coffee. A low mist hung just over the ground and gathered into the bush where the trees started. It was both creepy and beautiful. The mist swirled and seemed to dance as the sun warmed it and it burned off. She could see deeper into the woods. A moving shadow caught her attention. A ghost? Don't be silly, she chastised herself. She squinted hard, trying to get a better look at the dark shape. No shapes, moving along the edge of the wood. Bears? Oh wow. She had never seen bears outside the zoo. They looked smaller than she had expected. Because those are cubs, you idiot. If there were cubs frolicking about, that meant Mama wasn't too far away. Well, if there was a potentially overprotective mama bear out there, this Goldilocks didn't want to be around and catch any bear attitude. She stepped back inside and watched as the cubs disappeared into the mist from the safety of being behind the screen door, with one hand on the real door in case she had to slam it shut in a hurry. Her stomach rumbled. "Okay, I hear you, breakfast." She looked from her stomach and up as if she could see through the door to where the bears had been. How fast could bears run? Her knees still didn't feel completely better, so there was no way she would be able to get where she needed to on foot. She would have to drive. She sighed. She could, but she shouldn't. Could she get in her car fast enough if the bears decided to head her way? She picked up her purse and keys. The bears were way far out there, on the far side of the property. There shouldn't be a problem just getting in her car and driving to the diner. Except the fact that the diner wasn't open when she got there. The handwritten note taped to the door said Peter couldn't come in this morning, so they wouldn't have a cook until 2. Her stomach rumbled again in protest. The ice cream for dinner the evening before really hadn't satisfied her body's need for a balanced meal. It had given her more than enough calories and filled her up, but fat and sugar weren't as long-term satisfying as protein and vegetables were. With a resigned sigh, she returned to the retreat center. She had bought food that she could eat without cooking, or that she could cook in the coffee pot. If she could boil water, she could have soft-boiled eggs and noodles. She wasn't about to starve. She might be cranky over her culinary choices, but wasting away wasn't going to be an issue. There was no sign of the bears when she returned, all of 5 minutes after she left. Pouring the remaining coffee into a second mug, she rinsed out the pot in the still cold water. More than once in college, she had made ramen in a coffee pot. The trick was to add the spice packet to the noodles in the cup after they cooked, or the next cup of coffee would taste like soup, no matter how well the pot got washed out. Demi wasn't certain of the exact sequence of events. She had the pot in her hands, and she was stirring the noodles into a mug. She went to put the pot back into the coffee maker when something startled her, or had she been startled because the pot shattered? She was surrounded by broken glass, noodles, and water everywhere. She jumped back, hoping to get her feet out of the worst of it. No, a chunk of coffee pot sat in her mug of noodles. The other coffee mugs had also been directly under the accident. She picked up the little trash can and began placing the bigger pieces of glass into the bin. Ow crap! A red line appeared just under her thumb. The red welled up, and suddenly her palm stung from the cut. Demi dropped the glass in her hand into the garbage can, and stepping around the sudden mess, cut through the bedroom and into the bathroom to rinse off the cut. She didn't have a first aid kit. She'd have to wrap her hand in TP and head to the drugstore and pick some bandages up. As she wrapped TP around her palm and thumb, the roll ran out. Figures. She looked in the under-sink cabinet. Nothing. She barely had enough to press against the wound. There was no way. Dear God, what was that noise? It was loud and cacophonous. She dashed back out to the workroom to find a trickle of dark smoke rising from the base of the coffee maker, where a glob of noodles decided to burn. Crap, crap, crap. Demi grabbed a notebook with her good hand and began waving at the smoke detector to get it to shut up. She was far too short to reach it. And until the glass was cleaned up, she wasn't willing to climb on anything. The whoop of emergency vehicles filled the voids the screeching smoke detector made. Realization hit what all the noise was, and with slumped shoulders, she opened the door before a fully kitted-out fireman was climbing the stairs to the porch. Eli's dazzling smile didn't soothe her nerves as much as she needed. "You are certainly making things interesting around here," he said as he stepped into her room. The first thing he did was unplug the coffee maker. She should have thought of that. When his foot crunched on glass, he gave her a quizzical look. She shrugged. Using a pen and his much longer reach, he got the smoke detector to finally stop. "What happened here? Are you bleeding?" He reached for her head. "No, that's dye. My breakfast exploded. And when I went to go clean this up," she held out her wounded hand with a wad of TP covered in bright red, "the smoke detector went off." Eli stepped up to her and took her hand in his. She only winced lightly, as he prodded the fleshy base of her thumb. You won't need stitches. Come on out to the truck and I'll get this bandaged up. Is it safe out here with the bears? She asked as she followed him outside. Bears? Yeah, this morning I saw a couple of bears out there. She pointed out toward the tree line. They were small, so I figure they were cubs. I didn't see a mama bear. Did she say bears? A second fireman asked. This one wasn't all suited up. He wore the dark cargo pants and logo t-shirt that Eli had been wearing the previous day. Was it a requirement of firemen that their arms had to bulge with muscle? Gonna need to go out there and take a look. They're coming in a little too close to town. You aren't going to hurt them if they come farther in, are you? Demi asked. Nah, the Games Commission guys will have to come in. They'll trank the lot of them and release them farther out. If they get too used to easy access to human food, they can become aggressive if they think you are in between them and a good lunch. Demi's stomach grumbled audibly at the word lunch. You okay? Eli asked. Demi sighed. Let me catch you up from last night. She complained about there being no hot water, no one available to cook at the diner. She reminded him that she had been promised on-premises food, and that wasn't happening, and she told him about the exploding coffee pot of ramen. And I still have to clean all of that up. I'm sure the burned noodles are leaving an oh-so-pleasant odor in my room. How did you guys get here so fast? That smoke alarm wasn't that loud. No, but it is connected to a fire alarm system that notifies us if there is an alarm going off here. You're kidding me? The woman who owns this place can't be bothered with food or hot water, but she has a functional fire alarm? I have an idea. Eli patted her bandaged hand. Grab your shower stuff and come back to the station with me. Us. You can take a shower, we have plenty of hot water, and I'll whip up something for lunch. That would be great. You'll be there for when Daryl asks all kinds of annoying questions about the bears, the other fireman said. Who is Daryl? Demi asked. In my opinion, he's a little trigger-happy. He's the local Games Commission warden. It will be his job to come out here and trank the bears, Eli explained. Oh. Demi bit her lip. A shower and food sound great. Can I ride in the truck? Chapter 3. Demi came out of the shower looking like a drowned angel. Eli had never seen anyone so pretty, wet hair and all. And she radiated a soft light. He had never seen anything like it. She had glowed like that the very first time he saw her folded over in pain, sitting on the sidewalk. It came out a bit brighter than I was expecting, she said as she toweled her hair off. He didn't typically have a hero complex. Hooking up with the victims of his rescues was not a method of dating he employed, yet. There was something about Demi that made him want to get between her and the world, and bellow to all who could hear him that she was off limits. He had been trying to think of a good excuse to see her today. Breaking her coffee pot and setting off the fire alarm was not what he would have come up with. He had been thinking of strategically running into her at the diner for coffee, or something a little more innocuous like that. But this worked for him. Too bad Erickson and Daryl had to be there. Oh, you must be the elderly lady who saw the bears? Daryl said a moment later. Eli had enjoyed his moment of quiet appreciation of Demi, with her dripping wet hair, her heart-shaped face, and the way she moved as she crunched the towel into her now fire engine red hair, soaking up the excess water. What the hell is it with this town and calling me elderly? She stared at Eli with more than a hint of frustration, before turning her attention to the other men. I saw 2 bear cubs this morning. And seriously, what's with the elderly comment? We're just joshing with you, Erickson said. It stopped being funny a long time ago, Eli said. Have a seat, chow will be ready soon. I'm Daryl Young. Erickson told me you saw bears. I was in the area, so I thought I'd swing by and take care of the pests before they developed more serious bad habits. Pests? I think of bugs and rodents as pests, Demi said. Yeah, well, think of bears as big rodents. I like to think of bears as being victims to human sprawl, Eli added. He pulled 4 large bowls from the cupboard and began ladling in large portions of the chili that had already been simmering in the crockpot hours before they had to answer a fire call out at Demi's rooms and the retreat center / bed and breakfast / whatever Rosie was calling it this month. Eli placed bowls in front of everyone. Erickson got up to help by grabbing spoons and a roll of paper towels. A basket of cornbread muffins and the buttered dish finished off the meal. "This is good, thank you," Demi said with a smile. "We spend so much time at the station, we all have a few meals we can prepare," Erickson interjected. Eli wasn't appreciating Erickson, including himself in the conversation with Demi. It soon became obvious that Demi was entrenched with Daryl regarding the bear cubs. Daryl asked questions that Demi didn't have answers for. She described what she saw over and over again. Daryl would beat the point to death and beyond. They would be talking for a while yet. Eli cleared plates and excused himself. No one would miss him. He wanted to see for himself. If there had been cubs without a mom, that was concerning. Mother bears were never too far away from their cub. And Demi hadn't seen Mama Bear. Once out of the station, he jogged the few blocks to the retreat center and continued across the lawn. He scouted the area, but didn't see any signs of bears. He wasn't going to find anything in this form. A quick glance around convinced him he was alone. The shift took a moment of focus. He took a deep breath in, he smelled fresh air and pine duff. A second breath and he could smell the leaf mold and the scent of juvenile bears practicing marking trees. He lumbered following the scent trail. He didn't find an adult female. Damn it. That was troublesome. Those cubs were the equivalent of toddlers, and toddlers on their own always got into trouble. He followed the scent trail, not unlike following a human toddler in need of a diaper change. They had gotten close, but had turned off before wandering into town. How much longer did he have before Daryl was out here? Eli wanted to get to those cubs before Daryl did. That man had a bad habit of overdosing animals, to the point they never woke up. Eli couldn't decide if it was malicious intent or if Daryl was just incompetent at his job. Most likely a combination of both. He continued along the path of the 2 cubs. He intended to scare them deeper into the woods for now, and then when he had time, to drive them, much like herding cattle, so deep into the woods that they wouldn't accidentally wander back into town. He stayed on their trail until he found them, blissfully curled around each other napping in the warm sun. His bellow woke them with the start. Their attempt at a threat display was almost adorable, only it was dangerous. They needed to move, to run. He lumbered in their direction until they scampered. He trailed them for hours, heading north and east, deeper into the woods, higher into the mountains. As the sun set, they treed themselves. Eli was glad they hadn't tried that earlier. He didn't have the patience to wait for them to get hungry and climb down. But their timing was good. They would spend most of the night up there. When they came down, they would encounter a blanket of his scent warning them away. Hopefully, that would be enough to keep them from returning to town. Oh damn. He had wandered off, leaving Demi with Erickson and Daryl. And he had been gone the entire day. Not a good start to impressing the woman he was seriously interested in. It was full dark before he was in the woods surrounding town. He emerged from the woods behind the retreat center. He was tired and hungry. There was a light on in Demi's room. He headed straight for her. He was a few yards out of the trees and crossing the property when he heard a strangled scream. He looked up and saw a shimmer of light around a person in the distance. That was Demi. He started running in her direction. That's a bear. Eli had left the station, leaving Demi with Daryl for the rest of the afternoon. She wanted to kick him. He had rescued her, fed her, and then abandoned her to Daryl. Did he knock out the wildlife he transported away from urbanized areas by talking them to sleep? He made dull look like it had sharp edges. After describing to him repeatedly what she saw, they had come back to the property to examine the area. He didn't find anything. She had used their proximity to her rooms as an excuse to not return with him to the station. After making sure not to cut herself again, cleaning up the noodle mess that had been left behind, she spent the rest of the afternoon pouting. But as an author, she pouted on paper. She took out her frustration of being ditched with Daryl out on poor fictional characters who did not deserve to be stabbed to death by an icicle to the temple. It was the perfect murder weapon and left no fingerprints once it melted away. She felt slightly bad for killing off a character based on Daryl, but he made her want to gouge her own eyes out after being in his presence for more than 30 minutes. She really should have killed off the character inspired by Eli. He had just up and left her. That would make a great plot twist in the middle of the war between the bed and breakfast owner and the cafe owner. After all, their feud was based on both of them trying to get into Eli's pants. She should have him run off with the clumsy yet quirky visiting artist. That would serve the locals, but then she wouldn't have a series, and Demi needed to take this inspiration and leverage it into a series of at least 5 books. She also needed to figure out what the added bonus material would be. Would she give party planning tips on her website to align with the bed and breakfast event coordination, or should she do recipes again? The coffeehouse murders had been successful, and the drink blends she shared had been wildly popular. Demi sighed. Food was always easier. Besides, what did she know about party planning? She stole her ideas from Pinterest, just like everyone else. She looked up from her focused writing and discovered, yet again, she had spent hours hunched over her notebook. It was already dark out. Her stomach grumbled as if in protest. Not once had she been interrupted by hunger pains, only now did her stomach protest. Well, there was no cooking in the room, and she was even out of any future coffee, unless she bought another coffee pot. She should have explored that option this afternoon. Oh well, she could try again tomorrow. Hoping that Peter had returned to the diner, Demi found her keys and locked the door behind her on her way out. The diner served warm home-style goodness, just as the local diner in a small town should. She was not disappointed in the cherry pie either. Taking her time returning to the dismal rooms, she spent a while driving around the small town. She wanted to get a feel for how things were spaced out for this new series she had decided was going to happen. It had to, this place gave her far too many ideas. By the time it was time for her to leave, she should have notebooks full of notes and character profiles. What she wouldn't leave with was any memories of a whirlwind fling with the hottie fireman. That only ever happened in romance novels anyway. She wrote mysteries. It made perfect sense that Eli should disappear on her instead. As long as he didn't show up as a dead body, everything should be fine. It was late when she pulled back onto the property of the retreat center. Thinking she heard something off in the direction of where she saw the cubs, Demi looked up and squinted into the dark. Her throat went dry, and she gasped in a breath in terror. She dropped her keys and scrambled to find them in the dark. When she looked up, the dark form she thought she had seen was really there, and it was running toward her. "That's a bear," she said as she ran up the steps and tried to unlock the door. The key wasn't working. Her vision blurred as tears formed. She was going to be bear chow. This retreat had gone from bad to worse in record time. She heard a heavy footfall on the first step. Dropping into a ball, she wrapped her arms over her head and began crying. There was nothing she could do. This was the end. "It's okay." Eli's arms were suddenly around her and he began running soothing strokes down her hair. She sighed into his embrace and wrapped her arms around his back. "Bear," she whimpered against his strong chest. Her hands resting on bare skin. "Holy crap, why are you naked?" She jumped away from him, scanned her gaze down his body, and then spun around so she wouldn't stare. "What the hell are you doing out there naked?" "There's a bear." She pointed out into the dark, but there was nothing. She scanned the property and saw nothing. "Bear?" She looked at Eli. "What happened to the bear?" "I know what I saw." "Eli, where have you been all day?" "Can we go inside?" I'm feeling a little exposed out here. He made a gesture with his hand indicating his state of no clothing. Right? Demi took a deep breath and managed to get the door unlocked on the first try. She flipped the lights on, crossed through the bedroom, and grabbed a towel. She held it out to Eli as she returned. He wrapped it around his hips, and if anything, that was almost more distracting than him standing there completely nude. Naked, she could pretend he was a statue of a Greek god. Partially dressed, he was reduced to a mere human, a really hot one. How was your afternoon with Daryl? Sorry, I abandoned you with him. I needed to do something about those cubs. I shouldn't be speaking to you because of that. And what do you mean had to do something about the cubs? Wasn't that why he was here? Eli paced back and forth in the living room. Be careful, you don't have shoes on. That's where all the broken glass was. Eli stopped walking and looked at his feet. He had nice feet. What did you see out there just now? He asked. Seriously? I saw a very big bear coming at me. Is that what you've been doing all day? Being a bear or something? She thought she was being snarky, but the expression on Eli's face had her thinking something else. I don't trust Daryl, especially not with cubs. When you say you don't trust, you mean he's incompetent, or you think he's going to black market sell the cubs to a circus? Wow, I was thinking incompetent. The black market thing, I can't say I ever thought that, but I'm a mystery writer. I tend to go straight to outlandish worst-case scenarios. Eli nodded. Those cubs didn't have a mother bear with them, so? You found them? What did you do? You didn't tranquilize them and drive them, she trailed off. I thought you went to outlandish scenarios. This one definitely fits that definition. You turned into a bear and scared those poor babies out of the area. She covered her mouth with her hand. Holy crap, Eli. Are you serious? Are they safe? I think so. I left them hanging out in the top of a tree. They got tired of running away from me. Demi started laughing. And here I was, getting tired of chasing after you. Oh yeah? Eli stepped up to where Demi sat. She looked up at him, and then hooked her hand into the front of the towel. Yeah, you won't be needing this. She pulled and the towel fell to the floor. Chapter 4. In the morning, he was still there, still holding her. She loved the smell of him, but she needed a shower. She groaned, remembering there wasn't any hot water. What's the matter? Eli asked. No hot water and I could use a shower, she said. You don't want to wash me off so soon, do you? Demi laughed. No, your smell on my skin is wonderful. It's my own stink that has got to go. Eli rubbed his face and head against her belly. She giggled. I want your smell all over me, Eli said earnestly. Something about the way he said that made Demi feel like it was probably the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to her. She felt a blush creep over her skin. She bit her lip and smiled. She liked him entirely too much for only having met him, and now he wanted her smell on him. It was too fairy tale perfect. You're blushing, Eli teased. I was just thinking this was almost too perfect. Are you a cursed prince or something? You weren't joking when you said you went for the wild scenarios. No, I'm not a cursed prince. But the shifting, were you attacked? How does that even work? Honestly, I don't know. One day in my teens, I could just start shifting. It wasn't exactly something I could ask my mom about. I grew up in and out of the foster system. As soon as I aged out, I hightailed it for the woods. I figured if I ever lost control, I should at least be where bears live. I've been up here ever since. Wow, and you're comfortable telling me all this? Do you tell every woman you make scream? Eli's laugh had a bitter edge to it. There is something different about you, Demi. I've never exposed my hairier side to anyone before. And I feel horrible that I scared you. Even in bear form, I know who and what I am. I would never harm you. Demi rested her forehead against his arm. What do we do now? First thing is I have you break into my apartment and get me some clothes. And then I have to head back to the station and take my licks for abandoning duty. Break in? 15 minutes later, Demi was picking up stones, trying to figure out which one had the key hidden under it. Eli had said the big stone to her. They all looked big. With the key in hand, she climbed the stairs to the apartment located above and behind the town's laundromat. He was right. There was no possible way he could sneak in during daylight hours and not be seen by half the town. Inside it was warm and smelled of fresh laundry. Eli wasn't exactly a neat freak, but the place was tidy enough. There were no dirty dishes stacked up in the sink, and all dirty clothes were in a hamper and not on the floor. His bed wasn't made, and the towels were more wadded than hanging on the rods in the bathroom. She found the few items he had requested: deodorant, razor, clean clothes, and shoes. His boots were somewhere out in the woods. He would have to go find them, but he didn't want to do that while naked. When she returned to the retreat center with clothes and hot coffee from the diner, Eli kissed her. She melted into him, because his kisses were the kind that poets wrote epic tales about. His kisses made her understand why men went to war over women. The way he kissed her had her thinking about moving up here to be with him, and that thought did not scare her. Demi brought him a change of clothes and coffee. They would both need breakfast soon, but he wanted to retrieve his clothes before anyone found them. It would be disastrous if Daryl found his clothes, with his ID on them, out in the woods. It would be suspicious to say the very least. Head on over to the diner. I'll meet you there, he said, trying to convince Demi to get some food before she developed a headache from not eating properly. He already knew that she wasn't getting regular meals. I can come with you. A hike would be educational. Do you hike regularly? Eli said, looking down at her shoes. They may have qualified as athletic shoes, but they were more fashion accessories than function. Besides, I'm not confident that knee of yours is properly recovered. With much adorable pouting enhanced by her glow, Eli convinced Demi that this was less of a hike and more of a run, a long one. I don't exactly remember where I ditched and shifted, okay? I will meet you at the diner. Before or after you face the music at the station? I'll be there within an hour. It had taken him an hour and 15 minutes before he was walking into the diner. Demi was still there, waiting for him. An uneaten slice of pie in front of her. Pie for breakfast? Demi launched out of her seat and wrapped her arms around him. He pulled her in close and kissed her like he had waited a lifetime to get his lips on hers. In a way, he had. Pies for dessert, Demi cooed. She seemed inordinately happy to have him around. Breakfast dessert? Why not? So, success. Are you employed, or have you been grounded? Eli chuckled. Success, clothing retrieved. And Erickson didn't blame me at all for disappearing with Daryl around. He completely understood. Besides, my shift officially ended yesterday afternoon, so I was only MIA for 4 hours as far as they were concerned. Basically, I got lucky nothing happened. A stern reprimand, some extended unpaid vacation to make everything official, but no hard feelings. And I'm still employed. They put you on administrative leave? Oh, Eli, I'm sorry. Hey. He laced his fingers through hers and squeezed her hand. Not your fault, and worth it to keep those cubs safe. Excuse me? A tall man with dark curly hair wearing riding leathers interrupted. Are you Eli? Yeah, who's asking? The man extended his hand. Dante Palatine, Joe Erickson over at the fire station said I might find you here. That's me, can I help you? Dante? A pretty woman with extra curves and long dark hair approached, carrying a motorcycle helmet. I can't get the stupid latch to lock again. Dante took the helmet and kissed the woman on her temple. I'll take care of it. This is my wife, Gina. You sent in a DNA test, we have some questions for you. Demi's eyes darted from the couple standing in front of them, back to Eli's face. Why don't you join us? You did a DNA test? Yeah, all the guys did at the station. We were bored and Erickson's wife was making him do it, so we thought it would be interesting to find out what we all were. Besides, with not having family to ask, I figured why not. Eli turned his attention back to Dante. So, is that why you're here? Genetic relative search or something? Definitely or something, Gina said.
Legatum continues with Les and Tori. In Satisfaction, Book 7. Keep listening for a sneak peek. Les Hernandez has that whole bad boy chef routine down, and he has caught the attention of Tori, and she glows. He doesn't want to believe in the whole mate thing, and he doesn't want to get involved with his family any more than he already is.
Excerpt. The rain continued in a never-ending downpour. It had for days. Tori stomped in puddles, her crisp chambray workshirt a sodden mess. Her hair hung uncharacteristically straight, unable to defy gravity in the rain. Her wet clothes clung to her shape, her beautiful bountiful shape, and she glowed with a soft beckoning golden light. Les sat on his bike and watched her. How had he never realized what she would have felt like in his arms? God, desire stabbed just from watching her. Funny, now that he wanted her, she had firmly put herself off limits. Her recent actions had made that clear. Not showing up for deliveries, not responding to being tagged online, not hanging out at the Agave Grill. He knew exactly what he had done. Was she mad at him for the kiss? Or maybe she'd found someone who actively appreciated her in the past week. Something Les had failed to do. Well, the object of her affections was one lucky guy. Too bad Les had been too stupid to realize how he felt in time to do something about it. Well, his body had known, but his brain was stupid, making him one big idiota. Why had he been fighting the inevitable? For all appearances, she seemed like she was having a grand time kicking and splashing about. It was late, and she hadn't shown up for open-floor ballroom dancing tonight. He had, even though in his gut he was too afraid to face her. Too afraid, but he had to see her and she hadn't been there, so now he stalked her from the shadows, waiting for her. Why was Tori dancing alone in the rain, in the tiny park around the town gazebo? It was too wet to be out. Leaving his bike, Les ran with large loping steps, as if he could dodge the raindrops. The smell of kitchen grease that had clung to him all day wouldn't even wash out of his hair from all the rain. He stopped in front of her. His gaze took in her furrowed brow and sad eyes. Her soft bow-shaped lips pursed tight in an expression of concentrated rage. He wanted to tease her, tell her she looked like a little kid out here in the puddles, but the look on her face made it clear she was not in a teasing mood. When she spotted him, Tori halted mid-splash, and the hard lines around her soft mouth dropped away. She inhaled sharply. Les stepped closer, and Tori back-stepped away. She stepped to the side, and he cut her off. She tried again, but he was there. She stopped, no longer moving. Slowly he slid his hand down her arm and captured her hand. It was cool from the rain. Compared to his, her hand was tiny and soft. If he had danced with her before, he would have known, been prepared for her hand in his. He wrapped his other arm around her shoulder, before sliding it down her back, and began a slow step-step slide together. There were no smiles, no laughter, nothing. She wouldn't look at him. His gut bunched. He wanted her in his arms properly. He tightened his embrace, bringing them closer. Tori continued to look away. They moved to a rhythm that Les felt fit the symphony of the falling rain. She was so perfect but sad. He had done that. He knew it. If he could have changed his stupidity, he would have. They moved along the sidewalk in a slow waltz. Tori started to step away. Les redirected her, so they turned like planets orbiting each other, until she was pressed against his chest. Slowly Les dipped his face toward hers. Tori threw her arms up, shrugged away from Les, and continued to kick at the water. No, I can't. What's going on? Les asked. I'm hiding. She pushed her hands out, as if she was pushing him away from her head. She walked away. In the middle of the town, in the middle of the night? That's not very hidey. Les followed her. He reached out, grabbing her wrist. She turned and faced him. I am invisible. No one can see me. Anyone who does ignores what they see and keeps on with their own self. Tori flung her hand up in the air with a dismissive wave, breaking his hold on her. Hiding in plain sight. It's easy when nobody cares. She glared at him. Her eyes were red and puffy. Les felt her pain in the center of his chest. He struggled to find his voice around the burning lump in his throat. You're soaked. You need to go home and dry off before you get sick. Tori laughed, bitter and full of daggers. I have an iron constitution. I'll be fine. Iron rusts. Can we at least get out of the rain so I can talk to you? Tori made a growling noise and stomped toward the gazebo. Les followed her up the steps into the gazebo, which only offered protection from the rain, not the chill seeping into his skin. How did he begin to tell her how he felt? I thought we were friends. I did too. Tori slumped onto the wrought iron bench that someone had dragged into the center. She stared at her toes as she tapped her soggy sneakers up and down. They made a squelchy noise. Her voice grew quiet, and she wouldn't look at him. The lack of eye contact felt physical. Yeah, well, I'm done being the friend who gets ignored when someone better comes along. I'm done being convenient, being the friend no one calls unless they can't find anyone else to hang out with. I'm done being told, well, I do have other friends, you know, when I ask if they are busy. I'm tired of being the perpetual third wheel. And I'm done with allowing myself to be tucked away into the friend zone, because I can't seem to get attention any other way. I'd rather just be alone than constantly hurt by my so-called friends. You have friends here, Tori, he started. Really? Who? Bella and Emily have proven time and time again that I am nothing but a nuisance. My best friend from Davis hasn't texted me or called me in years. What about the ladies at the dance class? Tori let out a long sigh. I'm not friends with them. They are my grandma's age. They eat dinner at 5, and on the nights they aren't in dance class they are in bed by 8. It's not the same. What about Karen? You're always sticking up for her. I stick up for her because I don't think people should make judgment calls about something they don't understand. I don't understand her, but that doesn't mean I have to treat her differently than any other coworker. Les stood in front of her at a complete loss. What could he say? Everyone that he knew she knew could be explained away. He sat on the bench propping his elbows on his knees. My friends, she started. No. Not my friends. I have never made friends easily. I try. I really do. I make sure I'm understanding and respect other people's foibles. Unfortunately, that tends to land me with people who are only my friends because they think they can get something from me. And when I don't meet their expectations, when I can't be used to their advantage, I am disposable. I put up with a lot of crap so that I can feel like I have friends. And you know, it still catches me off guard every time it happens. You aren't disposable. Emotion sat thickly in Les's throat. Tori turned her gaze to him. He looked over at her. The impact of her emotions felt like a brick landing on his chest. She stared at him, waiting. He sat there like the idiot he was, with his mouth hanging open. Les tried to say something more, but words stuck in his throat. I don't think anyone does it on purpose, but... She shook her head, stood, and walked to the edge of the gazebo. They don't think how their actions impact anyone but themselves, and I deserve better. I'm done. I don't think I can be your friend anymore. Without another word, she disappeared into the rain. Hot pain paralyzed Les's body into place. His soul longed to follow her, but she had pierced him with a spike straight through his guts and into the ground. He felt as if all his blood left his body in a rush. He reached up and touched his face at the unfamiliar sting of tears. How many times had he called her gorgeous to her face, and then spent the rest of the night chatting up some other woman? How many times had he found her for a good conversation full of laughter, after it was clear he wasn't going to get laid that night? How many times had he been a complete jerk to her, only thinking about himself, and not that he was leaving her to walk home alone, or to sit by herself at a table because her friends had dumped her for some guy. And the one time he'd kissed her, it had felt like she was the very air he needed to live, but he'd deposited her with the very people she told him weren't her friends, like a gutless wonder, coward supreme. Les collapsed forward, burying his face in his hands. He'd watched those jerks deliberately hurt her, and never once clued in to the fact that he had been hurting her time and time again. Everything had changed the night he'd kissed her, and not for the better. He convinced himself he'd done it to protect her. It was better to walk away from the mate glow before anything happened, before attachments were formed and emotions were involved, before he hurt Tori. Too late. He was a coward, and she was the one who'd ended up getting hurt.